Welcome to this deep dive where we unpack the stories and the data that matter. Today we're looking at something pretty significant. The resumption of collections on defaulted federal student loans. This hasn't happened since, what, March 2020?
That's right. It's been paused for quite a while.
So you've pulled together some key info, and our mission really is to figure out the bottom line. What's this mean for borrowers and, for the whole student loan system's financial health?
Exactly. We're looking at reports from the Department of Education, the Associated Press. They paint a pretty clear picture. Essentially, this long pandemic-era pause is ending. Obligations for those in default are coming back into force.
Okay, let's get right into it then. The big news is collections restart in May.
Yep. May 5th, 2025 is the date.
May 5th. And they're starting with something called the Treasury Offset Program. What's that exactly?
Right. The Treasury Offset Program, it's a major tool for the government. Think of it like this. They can intercept certain federal payments heading your way.
Like my tax refund.
Exactly. Tax refunds, federal salary payments, maybe some other benefits too. And it's kind of wild when you think this specific tool hasn't been used for these loans since March 2020.
Well, 5 years. That is a long pause.
A very long time.
And the sources mentioned this has some people worried, right? Like former Trump officials talking about a fiscal cliff for the student loan portfolio.
Yeah, that concern seems real. The worry, I think, stems from just how much the total outstanding federal student debt has grown during this time.
Okay, so the numbers must be pretty stark then.
They really are. The reports highlight that only maybe 40% of borrowers are actually current on their payments.
Only 40%, so 60% are behind.
60% are behind. And digging into that, you've got about 4 million people who are really late 91 to 180 days.
That late-stage delinquency puts them right on the edge of default, doesn't it?
Absolutely. On a fast track to official default.
And just remind us, the total scale here, we're talking millions of borrowers, right?
Nearly 43 million federal student loan borrowers in total.
Okay, 43 million. And the debt?
A staggering $1.6 trillion outstanding.
1.6 trillion.
Yep. And add to that, roughly 5.3 million borrowers who are already in default before this even restarts.
Those numbers, they really put the challenge into perspective. Huge scale.
They really do. And it helps explain the rationale being given for restarting collections now. It seems like both the previous administration, which started the pause, and the current one sort of share this view that, quote, American taxpayers can no longer serve as collateral for student loans, and that debt needs to be paid back.
A pretty firm stance then.
Yes. And Education Secretary Linda McMahon put it similarly, saying taxpayers won't be forced to serve as collateral for irresponsible student loan policies.
So the stated goal is getting people back into repayment for their own good and the economy's good, supposedly.
That's the official objective, yeah. Helping borrowers, helping the nation's finances.
Okay, so how does this actually work on the ground? You mentioned the Treasury offset starting May 5th. That's step one.
Step one, exactly. The involuntary collection, intercepting those federal payments like tax refunds. That's the government's first move.
Okay, so your refund might get snagged. What comes next? Is there a step two?
There is. After they give borrowers in default a 30-day notice, the department will also start garnishing wages.
Wage garnishment. Okay, that sounds more direct. Taking it right from the paycheck.
Potentially much more impactful for the borrower, yes. A portion of their earnings gets sent straight to the loan.
So operationally, it sounds like a clear, if tough, plan.
Yeah.
But obviously not everyone's happy about this. Advocates are concerned.
Oh, absolutely. Very critical. They point to all the policy shifts, between administrations. They argue it's created a lot of confusion, uncertainty for borrowers trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I saw a quote here from Mike Pierce at the Student Borrower Protection Center. Calls it cruel, unnecessary, and likely to cause economic chaos. Pretty strong words.
Very strong. It reflects that fear that many borrowers are just not in a position to suddenly start paying again or handle collections. And remember, the timeline, the actual payment pause after extensions, only really ended with its grace period last October 2024.
So people only just restarted payments recently, if they could.
Exactly. And if you miss payments for about 9 months, boom, you're in default.
Which tanks your credit score and triggers these collections we're talking about.
Right. And like we said, besides the 5.3 million already there, you've got those other 4 million who are 180 days late, teetering on the edge.
So why are so many people struggling? Is it just they don't have the money?
That's definitely part of it for many, yes. But there's another angle. Kristen McGuire from Young Invincibles made a really interesting point. She said, people are in default because they can't pay and because they don't know how to pay.
Ah, so it's the complexity, too. The system itself is confusing.
Exactly. All the different plans, the rules, it can be overwhelming.
And I read something about layoffs potentially making it harder to even get answers from federal student aid. That can't help.
No, that definitely doesn't create a supportive environment if people are struggling to navigate the system and have questions.
Plus, didn't some court ruling mess with income-driven repayment plans recently, making things even less certain?
Yeah, there was definitely some disruption there. Applications were paused for a bit. That kind of instability is really tough for borrowers.
Okay, so it's a difficult situation. Collections are restarting, people are confused, maybe struggling financially. Are there any solutions being offered beyond just restarting collections?
Well, the education department says it has a communications plan, to tell borrowers their status, push enrolling in auto debit.
Auto debit, okay. That might help avoid missed payments, I guess. Simple step.
Maybe. But they also say they plan to work with lawmakers on broader reforms, higher education financing, the repayment system itself.
Broader reform. So acknowledging the underlying problems need fixing.
It suggests that yes, that maybe just turning collections back on isn't the whole solution.
And there's some bipartisan ideas floating around, aren't there? Like that employer repayment thing.
Right, the Employer Participation Repayment Act. Senators Thune and Warner, Representatives Maliatakis and Peters. It would make a current temporary provision permanent, allows employers to give employees tax-free money for student loans up to $5,250 a year.
That sounds potentially helpful. Is that temporary provision ending soon?
It's set to expire in 2026 currently, so making it permanent could be a big deal for some borrowers.
Interesting. And the sources also touched on the previous administration's ideas about changing the Ed Department itself, reducing federal influence.
Yeah, briefly. A broader goal to shrink the federal role in education, though they noted things like Pell Grants, student loans, special needs services would likely continue, just maybe in other agencies. It speaks to that larger ongoing debate.
Okay, but back to the immediate situation. For someone in default right now, facing wage garnishment soon, what can they actually do? Is there anything?
Yes, there is one key option mentioned. Loan rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation. How does that work?
Betsy Mayotte from the Institute for Student Loan Advisors explains it. You contact your servicer, show proof of income and expenses, and then you have to make 9 straight on-time payments based on what you can afford.
9 on-time payments gets you out of default.
Successfully completing it does, yes. But, and this is crucial, you can generally only do it once.
Only once. Okay, that's really important for people to know. A one-shot deal.
Exactly.
And we should probably mention, the Biden administration did cancel some student debt, right? Though Secretary McMahon suggested maybe that went too far.
Right. It just highlights that constant tension, doesn't it? Yeah. Relief for borrowers versus taxpayer responsibility. It's a really tough balance to strike.
No easy answers there.
Definitely not.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways. Collections are back on starting May 5th after that long pandemic pause. It impacts millions, raises big questions about fairness, ability to pay, and the whole higher ed finance system.
Yeah, it's complex. You've got government action, potential bipartisan laws trying to address it all. But the scale is just immense. The end of this pause is a really significant moment for student loans.
Absolutely. And it leaves you thinking, with this much debt out there and collections starting again, what bigger changes are really needed in how we finance higher education? To stop this level of default happening again, keep education accessible. This whole situation really shines a light on that ongoing debate about responsibility, affordability, and, well, the government's role in it all. Definitely food for thought.